My trusty sidekick Emma is with me today. Apparently she's taken a bath. Today is part 2 in our video series of getting things done. Well, hi everyone and welcome. If you're new here, welcome. And if you're a returning visitor, welcome back. Always happy to see you. Today is our second in our video series on the process called getting things done, which is a productivity process written about by David Allen in his book called Getting Things Done. In our last video, we talked a lot about the process of getting things done. It is an outcome and actions-based methodology of productivity where you set a goal or an outcome and then you work towards that goal or outcome by a series of baby steps and trying to get things done and checked off your list to move things forward. You can see here that there are 5 different steps to the GTD or getting things done methodology. First, we have capture. Next is clarify. Clarify means figuring out if something is actionable or not. Do you need to do something with this information or not? The third part is to organize that. That means put it where it belongs. Schedule it, file it, do whatever needs to be done with it. The fourth step is to review or reflect, and that can be done on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis, depending on what you need to do. And the last one, or the 5th step, is to engage. And that is to daily work on chunking away at these little things that you have written down. Now, it seems like a lot of information and it seems like a lot of steps, but once you get into the process, it's really not that hard. So what I wanted to show you today is how I do that in OneNote, of course. So let's jump into the computer, and I've got a bunch of things to show you today. So you can see here on my screen that I've been collecting a lot of notes on getting things done. I have outlined all of the areas that we've talked about, the different steps that we've talked about, and you see some people have created these intricate diagrams with what everything should do. Some people have it in chart form. David himself did a whole bunch of tips during the pandemic, and so we have all of his tips and tricks here. Somebody thought it might be better if you added color to the diagram. There's so much stuff out there about getting things done. Then there's even the nod to the Eisenhower matrix, so I have that in my notes as well. But what I have been able to do over the past year since learning about all of this stuff is I have been able to create a number of templates or little charts that I use for myself, and I thought today that I would just show you kind of my thinking and how I have that set up. So I'm going to be jumping back and forth between the outline and my notes and what my actual templates look like so that you can see the correlation. Okay, so the first thing is to capture everything in an inbox. That you see right here. Let me zoom in so you can see that. The first thing that I looked at was capturing things. That's the first stage. And you do that with an inbox or a brain dump. And it's whatever is on your mind, you capture that down on a piece of paper or a list of some sort. Get it out of your head, because remember, David Allen says your brain can only hold 4 to 5 things at a time. It can either be digital or analog. The easiest way to do it is to just take a notebook page and just start writing anything and everything that comes to your brain. Some people kind of get stuck on that, so there are actually brain dump triggers. Let me jump to a different page and I'll show you those. This personal list that you see here and this professional list that you see on the right-hand side all came from the GTD website, where they have lists of these brain triggers or brain dump triggers. The list that you see in the middle is kind of my scaled down list that I've kind of curated over the past year, things that I need to think about specifically because I'm no longer a professional. There are lots of things on that list that I don't have to worry about. So if you take a look at this middle list here, when I go through and do a monthly brain dump, I will go through this list specifically and say, is there anybody I need to call or text or send a card to this month? Maybe it's their birthday, maybe it's their anniversary, that kind of thing. Do we have any Zoom events scheduled for family birthdays or meetings, that kind of thing? And I will go specifically through each item on this list and write them down. Now, where do I write them down? That's what I want to show you. I created a table here. And remember, in OneNote, everything is stored in a container. So you see this gray box outlining this section that says inbox. This is my inbox container. And it says this list gives you permission to write down anything that comes into your mind. Then you can figure out where to put it, creating clarity so that you can be present and not distracted. Okay, so in the last video, remember I talked to you about there are really two things to look at when you are clarifying your inbox, and that's whether something is actionable or not. So you'll see here at the top in this section that I have whether something needs to have action taken on it or no action is needed. So those are our two main categories, okay? I also have a place here for the date that the event was added or the item was added. And then I have the task, event, thought, project, or idea. And then if an action is needed, is it going to go on my next list, my next action list, my waiting on list, my project list? Or if no action is needed, will it go in someday or reference? I could put an other in here too because I have lots of other lists. Let me go through and fill a couple of these out so that you can see what I'm talking about. I will speed this up so you don't have to watch me type. Okay, so I have added a few things to this list just so you can see what I'm talking about. And let's say I'm taking a walk outside or I'm out gardening and I remember that I need to put in a cat food order. So I can take out my phone, open up my OneNote, go to my inbox, and just leave myself a note here that says I need to buy cat food, and the place that I buy cat food is Chewy. You see in the third column here that I added that to my next actions list. That's where that should go because it's important to get that cat food ordered quickly. The next thing I have down is to call the chiropractor. Maybe I hurt my back while I was out gardening, bent over it a little too far, or picked up something heavy, and I need to call the chiropractor. That also would go on my next items list or my next action list. And another thing that my husband and I have been talking about is traveling to England when our daughter does her graduation from graduate school. So that, I think, will not just be simply picking up the phone and making a call. It's not something that we're waiting on somebody else to do. It's actually a project that we're going to need to research. You know, what are the steps and ability and availability to get into England, and research plane tickets and all of those kinds of things. So that's definitely going to be a project. Okay. I could also add things on here that might go on my someday list. So I have been working on learning Portuguese. I have been researching will information, and that simply is going to be stored in my reference section. Okay, so you kind of see how I can use all of the various categories that I have up there. This is one way to do it. There are other ways to do it in OneNote. This just happens to be one way that seems to work for me. Okay, so the next thing, once you have everything in your inbox, you have your whole list, and you've clarified where they need to go, on what list they need to go to, then you actually need to move them to that list. So right here next to my inbox, you see I have my next task list. Let me move over so you can see that. Well, many people ask, how do you know when you have this next task list or next action list, as David Allen calls it? What is your priority? Well, David Allen would tell you what most has your attention, which thing will cause you to have the most freedom, those are what your priorities are, okay? So if the cats are pestering me constantly because we don't have any cat food, the next item on my list, the top priority on my list, should be to buy them cat food so that they will not bother me so much, okay? So that's kind of how you determine your priorities. Getting things out of your head clears your mind to think and not to store things. So if I take a look back here at my inbox, I had 2 things for my next action list, and rather than retype them, all I need to do is right click and copy, and I can come over here and paste. Right click and copy, and come over here and paste. Okay. Now, one thing that David Allen talks about is being very specific about your context when you make a next task or a next action item. So, for example, to buy cat food, I need to be near a computer to do that because it is an online order that I need to put in. To call the contractor, I can be anywhere really to do that, but that is a contact that I need to make, so I will put a star there. So I will know when I am sitting somewhere and have a few minutes, I can look at who do I need to contact, and I can see, oh yeah, I needed to call the chiropractor. I have her number stored in my phone, so that's very easy to do. So the next task list or the next actions item list is one way to process that information. Okay, let's jump back to our research. So we've captured things in our inbox by doing a brain dump and writing those things down. We've clarified by thinking about each item and the associated actions, and we've asked ourselves, is it actionable? Is it not actionable? And where do we need to put it? Do we have to defer it, so we're going to put it on our actions list or our to-do list? Are we just going to take care of it and do it then? Is it something we put on our project list to do later? Or is it something that I've delegated, so it needs to go on my waiting on list? And if it's not actionable, are we going to trash it, put it on our someday maybe list, or put it in our reference section? Okay, so we've taken care of those things. Now we're on to organizing. So we've created our next actions list, which I just showed you. And we have a couple other lists that we might need to make. A waiting on list, our calendar, which I use not only my monthly dashboard and my weekly, but I also keep things on Google Calendar so that I can check it no matter where I am. And I also have project plans that I want to show you. So let's jump back to our templates page and I'll show you these other organizing planners that I have set up. Okay, so here's our inbox, we saw that. Here's our next task list, which we saw that. Here is my waiting on section. And my waiting on list says, this is a list to write down anything that has been given to someone else to do, and for you to mark your follow-ups and your status. And then I put a little code here. Did I contact them by email, phone call? Did I do it IP or in person? Or did I have a meeting with them? Was I involved in a meeting when this event came up? Or when this action item came up? So earlier this week, I told my husband that the car needed an oil change, and he said that he would take care of that this weekend. And I told him, okay, that it was due by October 15th. He said that would be no problem. So when the weekend comes and I take a look at this list next week when I do my weekly review, I can check with him, I can follow up with him and see if the oil change got done, and if it's completed I can put that there. If there were any notes from the oil change, I can note those here. Maybe it's time to have the transmission looked at or the tires rotated, whatever recommendations they might have. Okay? So that's my waiting on list For anything that I give to somebody else, that I delegate to somebody else, this is a way for me to keep track of what I've delegated to them. Sometimes I've also used this for resources that I've loaned to somebody. Let's say I've given somebody my favorite cookbook to borrow, or a teacher's manual or something like that. I will mark it on here because I'm waiting on them to return it to me. Sometimes I also add orders on here. If I'm waiting on an order to come in, I will put it on here, and then when that order comes in, I can just check it off. So there's lots of ways to use this waiting on list. It's pretty handy. I also have a to buy list. And so you saw up there that I had cat food that I needed to buy. And I'm going to put down that that is a Chewy order. And I'm thinking about putting that on a automatic, coming every month kind of thing. So that would be very helpful. And I think that's something that I'm going to try. That's online, so I'm going to mark that over here as online. And I also have other lists down here, not necessarily in David Allen's list, but they're lists that help me. So for example, I have errands to run. Let's say I have to, go to a certain town, or like I said, I live pretty rurally, so there are 2 or 3 major towns that I can go to from my home. And I have specific things that I like to do when I'm going to that particular town. So let's say I'm going to Odenton. I have to, do a few things up there. Maybe I want to drop off some donations. Maybe I want to, I think I have to take my husband's tennis racket up and have it restrung. And one of my favorite grocery stores is up that way. So I would go ahead and fill that list out as errands that I might need to run. Go to the post office, go to the dump, those kinds of things. They tend to be lumped together depending on which direction I'm going in. Another thing that I like to have is a bill tracker list where I can put the due date of, say, the electric bill, and what the amount is, and I can check it off when it's been paid. That's a pretty handy list to have. And books to read. I'm always getting recommendations of books to read from other people, from YouTube people that I watch, from friends, from family members, from Goodreads. So I always like to keep a list of books to read. So that's kind of just a handy checklist to have. Okay, moving over. This is a list that I call one-to-ones. Now, it's not the same as in the business world where you're having meetings about, performance reviews and that kind of thing. This is my agenda for talking points for whoever it might be. When I was an educator, I might need to talk to the principal about something. So I would keep a list for items that I needed to talk to the principal about. Or because I was a special education teacher, I had a lot of interaction with the occupational therapist and the physical therapist who would come to our school to work with children. But she might only come and see me once a month that we could touch base about what was going on with some of the kids. So I would keep a list in my teacher planner, questions to ask the occupational therapist, questions to talk to the physical therapist about, or the speech pathologist, or the psychologist, those kinds of things. So I've just carried that into my private life, and now I have talking points for my daughter. Because, again, as I get older, I tend to forget more things, and I don't talk to my daughter every day, so it's nice to have a place to write down things that I want to talk to her about. So here's simply a place for me to write down, questions about, has she found a different flat that she'd like to live in for the remainder of her time there? How's the job hunting going? Do they have a schedule for graduation yet? And then when she says, hey mom, do you want to do a call? I can bring up my list and I won't forget to ask any of these particular questions. Now, you may look at this and think, well, if you're just talking to your daughter, why do you have action items listed on here? Well, sometimes from our conversations, things come up that I might need to take care of, so I just really wanted to have a place to write those things. For example, if she's looking at a different flat, she may send me a lease agreement to review, or if she's job hunting, she may ask me to read over her resume or something like that. So I have it there in case there's something that I have to do to help her out. You can create these one-to-one agenda talking point pages for anybody that you have in your life that you have contact with. So I think they're pretty handy to have. This is my someday maybe list, and this list gives you permission to write down anything that you can think of without any kind of restrictions. It gives yourself permission to create the best fantasy of what your life is like. Then think about the experiences that that kind of life would give you. Would it give you more freedom to be creative, to try new things, to do more in your community, to have more confidence, to have more clarity, all of those kinds of things? Your experiences are just as valuable as your outcomes. And so think to yourself, what can I do right now to help me have more of those experiences? It's okay to dream. It's okay to have a vision board. It's okay. It's okay. But writing things down helps you get to that particular goal or fantasy or vision, whatever you want to call it. So you see I have down here, put down here in November of last year that I wanted to start learning Portuguese, just in case. I'm hoping to travel to Portugal at some point, so that would be nice to at least speak a little bit of the language. You see here in December of 2020, I wrote down that I'd like to start a YouTube channel. Well, I was kind of just kidding with my daughter about how to create a YouTube channel using OneNote as an organizer. Well, 2 months later, I had started my YouTube channel. And now look at all the followers that we have. So speaking of which, if you have learned anything today or you like our content, please go ahead and give me a like. A thumbs up is wonderful and it helps my channel a lot. Also, you can hit that subscribe button so that you can be notified by ringing the little bell when other videos are posted. I post videos every Friday, and I would love if you came back and visited us again here at this channel. So you see, you write something down and you never know what's going to happen. Other thoughts that I've had, I'd like to have new flooring on the main level of this house that we've lived in. It's about time for the carpet to be replaced. So I'm going to write that down and I'm going to keep it in mind. Maybe if I ever start making money on YouTube, maybe that's what I'll spend my money on. Maybe I'll splurge and put down some new flooring for myself. Anyway, there's traveling to the UK for Samantha's graduation. We'll see when that happens, if they ever decide to schedule it. Because of all this COVID stuff, things have been a little off, but we'll see. But that's my someday maybe list. You can add to it. For example, you notice this list is getting a little full. Because I create these as tables in OneNote, all I have to do is come down here to the bottom of this last row, hit my enter key, and you see a whole new row appears. So these lists can continue growing. It's not a problem at all. Another type of container that I've made is a project plan. This is just one of many types of project plans that you could use. None of these are set in stone. They're all just things that I've created out of my head for the purposes that I have. I'm sure there are different people out there who do them differently. Some people would keep a spreadsheet with all of this stuff. That would work too. You do you and I'll do me. For right now, this is working for me. All right, so what is a project plan? A project plan, as David Allen says, is anything that requires more than 2 action items. If you can't do it in 2 steps, you need to have a project plan. This list gives you a place to write down all of your desired outcomes. You want to be specific with all the granular steps that you need to complete to move this project forward, okay? So for example, on this project plan, I have that I would like to buy a new camera. Why do I want to do that? What's my purpose? Well, my smartphone doesn't take a clear video and I need it for a crystal clear life. So the outcome is when I go to record my first video and my camera takes clear, not shaky video with great audio. That's the outcome that I want. I want smooth video happening for my YouTube channel. And the target date is by the end of this year, by December of this year. Now, that's my overall outcome. Now I have to do all the steps. So let's go down here to the task descriptions, and you see that I want to search for camera reviews on the internet. I want to ask my husband for recommendations because he is a photography hound after all, and so he knows a lot about cameras. I want to check the prices on Amazon, and eventually I want to buy a camera from Amazon. And you see here that I have kind of deadlines for myself. I'm hoping that maybe there'll be something that I can keep an eye out for Black Friday deals, and by December I'd like to have a new camera, and so that my videos can improve. So that's kind of a project plan. So right now, one of the things that I'm at is searching for camera reviews on the internet. If you have any great cameras that you use, go ahead and leave that information in the description for me, and that will help me with my research. I would really appreciate that. When we come back over here to our organized outline, you see I have a waiting on list. I have a calendar, either in my weekly or my monthly year at a glance, or my Google Calendar. I have a next actions list. I have a project plan. I have a someday maybe list, and I have my reference section. Actually, I have an entire reference section in my OneNote notebook. In fact, we're sitting in my reference section right now. That's where I store all of my notes when I'm researching something new. The next step is to reflect. That means to do a review. I'm going to do a whole separate video on how I do a weekly, daily, weekly, and monthly review. So I'm not going to cover that now. But engaging daily, let me talk to that point just a little bit. To engage daily, what you really want to do every day or the night before is take a look at your calendar. What are the hard landscape items? What are those things that will not change? That doctor's appointment is not going to change. That flight is probably not going to change. That meeting with the pastor is not going to change. So those are what David Allen calls the hard landscape, those things that are set in stone. What are those things that you have to do? Think about that first. And then go to your next actions list. Well, what items on there can you complete? What calls can you make? What emails can you send? What outside work can you do? And fit it in around those calendar items, those hard landscape items. Then pop down to your waiting on list. Check in to see, did your husband get the car oil changed? Has the customer service department called you back with your answer to your question yet? And then start looking at your projects. Well, could I do a little bit of research on that camera while I'm sitting here for a few minutes? So that's kind of how it works. Whatever's on top of your mind is your top priority, and you fit that top priority and those other things around your hard landscaped items. Okay, at the bottom of this page, I want to show you one more idea for how a chart could be made to kind of track some of these things. Remember I said some people might want to do this in a spreadsheet? Well, let me zoom out a little bit and I'll show you what this looks like. Okay, so here's another idea that might work. There's a place for you to put your priorities here in this far right-hand column, and then there's a place for context. So right here I set up a row that was for next actions or to-do items. Okay, and you see that I put a context at computer or a phone call or something that I need to do at home. I then put a checkbox so that I could see that if it was done, and then I put the to-do item that needed to be done. So for example, if you look at this one that I have in here, there was a phone call that needed to be made to call Sharon about a birthday gift for Sam. And the date that I wanted to have that finished by was June 21st. Okay? And then I have a place there that I can put notes if I want. So that's all well and good. Then right under that, as if this were a spreadsheet set up, I have a section for waiting on. Okay? And this is for something for church, an email for church that I have an approval for the prayer list for Facebook for the Lent season. So during Lent we did daily prayers, and I needed to make sure that that had been approved by all the powers that be before we went ahead with that. So that was just another way to put it on the list. You then see I have my purple projects here where I could list any projects that I might be working on, and my someday maybe list, a section to write things down here as well. So rather than having all the various little containers like I have already showed you, this is everything in one big container on one big chart, very much like a spreadsheet. That works too. Okay, well, I think that about wraps it up for today. I just wanted to give you some ideas of how to take all of these words of getting things done and to show you some ideas for what your actual lists might look like and how that process flows from getting something into your inbox and then moving it to your next items or your project list or something like that. I have more to say on GTD. Don't worry, there will be at least one more, maybe 2 videos coming. So I hope you're enjoying this series. If you are, if you've tried GTD, go ahead and leave me a comment and let me know what you thought about the whole process. Remember, it's all about flexibility and creating freedom. So there are hundreds of ways that you could do this. And I'm just choosing a way that works for me here in OneNote. Anyway, thanks for joining me today. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And until next time, okay, bye.